Emily had always imagined that marriage would grow stronger with time. She believed love deepened each year, shaping two people into something unbreakable. But after 10 years with Mark, she found herself waking up each morning with a strange heaviness in her chest, wondering when the distance between them had quietly formed. It wasn't one fight or one misunderstanding. It was smaller than that: colder mornings, shorter conversations, tired eyes that rarely met hers. She noticed it little by little until the silence between them felt like a third person living in the house. Their home in the suburbs of Seattle looked warm from the outside soft lights in the windows. A well-kept porch, a little maple tree in the yard. But inside, Emily felt the kind of loneliness that made rooms echo. Mark left earlier for work now and came home later. When he did speak, he sounded careful, like he didn't want to trigger another disagreement. But they weren't even arguing. That scared her more. At least arguments meant someone still cared enough to fight. One rainy Thursday afternoon, after waiting hours for Mark to come home, Emily sat at the edge of their bed, staring at the closed door. She wanted to talk to him, but every time she tried, he brushed it off with a tired, "I'm fine." She kept telling herself he was just stressed. But deep down she felt something more slipping: his attention, his warmth, his willingness to share even the smallest piece of his day. She needed someone to talk to, someone she trusted, someone who cared about both her and Mark. Without thinking twice, she reached for her phone and called her closest friend. Claire answered on the second ring, her voice bright as ever. "Hey, everything okay?" Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. "Can you come over?" I don't want to be alone right now. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Claire said. No questions asked. When Claire arrived, the sky outside was washed in gray. The kind of Seattle evening where the corners of the windows turned misty. Claire shook off her coat, her smile immediately fading when she looked at Emily's face. "Tell me," Claire said, sitting beside her on the couch. Emily took a long breath and tried to organize her thoughts. "I don't know how to reach Mark anymore. He's always tired, always quiet, and when I ask him what's wrong, he just says work is stressful. But it feels like it's something more than that, like he's carrying everything alone." Claire listened closely, giving her full attention. That familiar presence made Emily's voice steadier. And the words finally spilled out. "I don't want to lose him," Emily whispered. "But I can't help him when he won't let me in. And I'm scared I'm making things worse by trying." Claire's expression softened. "You're not losing him. He's overwhelmed. Sometimes people shut down when they don't know how to ask for help." Emily hesitated, then said something she had never imagined herself saying. "Will you talk to him? Not as my friend, but as someone he might open up to. He trusts you. He listens to you. Maybe he'll tell you what he can't tell me." Claire blinked, surprised. "You want me to talk to him?" "Yes." Emily forced herself to keep speaking before fear stopped her. "I just need to understand what's happening. And maybe he can talk more freely with someone who isn't part of the marriage." Claire didn't answer right away. She looked thoughtful, concerned, unsure if this was a good idea. But after a moment, she nodded slowly. "If you want me to help, I will. I'll be gentle. I'll just listen." A weight lifted off Emily's chest, mixed with a new ache she didn't fully understand. She thanked Claire, and they talked quietly about what might be stressing Mark at work. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt less alone when Mark finally walked through the door that night. Rain droplets on his jacket. He paused, seeing both women on the couch. His eyebrows rose slightly. "Everything okay?" Emily forced a smile. "We just wanted to talk to you." He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, his hair slightly disheveled. But when he saw Claire, something like relief flashed in his face. She stood and greeted him warmly, making it easier for him to join them at the table. They all sat down, and Claire started gently. "We've been worried about you. You look exhausted. How are you really doing?" Mark hesitated. Emily watched him closely, waiting for the usual "I'm fine." But instead, he lowered his head and took a long breath. "It's been a lot," he said quietly. "Work is overwhelming. I'm trying to hold everything together, but I feel like I'm failing. Every day feels heavier than the last. Emily felt a sting in her chest. This was the first honest thing he had said in weeks. Her instinct was to reach for his hand, but she stayed still, afraid he might retreat if she pushed too hard. Claire leaned forward, her tone soft and understanding. You don't have to carry all of it alone. No one can. Mark rubbed his forehead, letting the words settle. I didn't want to worry Emily. She already does so much. I didn't want to add more stress to our home. Emily's throat tightened. Hearing that hurt more than she expected, but in a way that made her want to wrap her arms around him. Before she could speak, Claire gently placed her hand on Mark's. It was a simple gesture, comforting, respectful. But to Emily, watching from across the table, it felt like watching someone step into emotional space she had been locked out of. Mark kept talking. For the first time in months, he opened up. He spoke about a new manager who pushed too hard, deadlines that seemed impossible, the fear of disappointing people. His voice cracked once, just for a moment, and Emily's heart nearly broke. She had waited so long to hear him speak with this much honesty. But the truth came with a strange ache. He wasn't opening up to her. He was talking to Claire. The conversation stretched on. Claire asked thoughtful questions. Mark answered with quiet relief, like he'd been holding his breath and someone finally told him it was okay to exhale. Emily watched the two of them talk, feeling part of it yet separate from it. She wasn't jealous in a romantic way. She trusted both of them deeply, but she felt displaced. Standing outside a door she had been knocking on for months, when the conversation finally slowed. Claire squeezed Mark's hand once more before letting go. You're not alone, she said softly. You have people who care about you. Let them help. Mark nodded, looking lighter than he had all week. Thank you, he said. Both of you. After Claire left, Emily and Mark exchanged a quiet goodnight. Nothing dramatic happened. No final argument or grand moment. But Emily went to bed thinking about the way Mark had looked at Claire, the openness. The Izand wondered why she couldn't reach him that way anymore. She had wanted the truth. She had asked for help. She just didn't expect the answer to feel like this. When she closed her eyes that night, one thought echoed in her mind. This favor might change more than I planned. She didn't yet know how true that was. And part 1 ended there, on the edge of a shift she felt coming but couldn't predict. The morning after that rainy night, Emily woke with a strange restlessness. Sunlight filtered softly through the blinds, but she felt no warmth. Her mind kept replaying the previous evening. Quiet conversation at the kitchen table. The sound of Mark's voice when he finally spoke his truth. And she couldn't stop thinking about Claire, how naturally she had drawn Mark out. How as Lee he had shared with her feelings he had withheld from Emily for weeks. It wasn't jealousy, not really, but a sense of displacement she hadn't expected. She had asked Claire to help, knowing her husband needed someone he could open up to. But watching it unfold left a subtle ache she couldn't ignore. The thought that someone else could understand Mark in ways she hadn't made her feel. Complicated, almost guilty, Mark came into the kitchen wearing a light gray shirt, slightly rumpled, carrying the quiet fatigue of someone who had shared a burden for the first time. Morning, he said, and for the first time in weeks, his smile didn't feel forced. He made her coffee, his movements easy, almost playful, as stark contrast to the tension she remembered from the nights before. Emily took a sip of the steaming coffee, marveling at how small gestures could suddenly feel monumental. Thanks, she said softly, her voice lighter than she expected. She wanted to ask him about last night, about what it felt like to finally open up, but something held her back. Maybe it was the fear of intruding. Maybe it was the lingering ache she hadn't named yet. I'm meeting Claire later, Mark said casually. She offered to help me think through some work decisions. I hope that's okay. Emily froze mid-sip. The words weren't alarming. She had expected him to reach out to Claire. But hearing him say it aloud stirred a new tension in her chest. Of course, she replied, though the tiny knot in her stomach refused to loosen. She told herself it was fine. After all, she had asked Claire to help. But now, seeing him talk about it with such ease, she felt strangely out of place in her own life. The hours crawled slowly, and Emily found herself thinking about what she had seen the night before, replaying Claire's comforting gestures toward Mark, the gentle hand on his wrist, the way he had allowed himself to be vulnerable. She realized she had never seen him look so open in months, not even in their most honest conversations. It made her heart ache with longing and quiet relief at the same time. She wanted him back in that way, but she also wanted to trust Claire. Wanted to believe she was helping rather than interfering. Unable to sit still any longer, Emily decided to drive to the nearby lake, a place they had often visited together, a quiet spot where emotions felt safer to express. It was late afternoon, the sun low on the horizon, reflecting golden streaks across the calm water. As she approached the bench near the pier, she saw them, Mark and Claire, sitting side by side, leaning slightly toward each other, voices low but animated. They weren't holding hands or doing anything improper, but their closeness, the easy flow of conversation, reminded Emily of what she had been missing in her marriage. For a moment, she stayed hidden, her heart fluttering with conflicting emotions. She had asked for this, she had asked Claire to help, but seeing it happen, witnessing their connection firsthand, was a new experience entirely. Her mind raced. Was she relieved? Was she hurt? Maybe a little of both. She finally stepped forward, making her presence known. And both of them looked up, surprised but smiling warmly. "Emily," Claire called softly. "You scared us." Emily forced a smile. "I just wanted to see you both." Mark stood quickly and opened his arms, a small, hesitant hug. Emily leaned into him, feeling the familiar weight of his shoulders against hers. It was comforting, grounding, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to breathe freely, letting go of the tension that had built up over weeks. Claire watched them, her expression gentle, almost knowing. "I think both of you have been hurting more than you realized," she said softly. "Talking to me helped, maybe, but what you really need is to talk to each other, face to face, honestly." Mark's gaze met Emily's, and she noticed something different in his eyes. It was clarity, a recognition of what had been lost, and a desire to regain it. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice raw but sincere. "I should have told you how hard it's been. I didn't mean to shut you out." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. She had waited so long for him to speak like this, not to Claire, not to anyone else, but to her. And finally, he was here, in front of her, open and unguarded. "I understand," she replied, her voice breaking slightly. I missed you. I missed us." They sat on the bench together, the lake stretching quietly before them, reflecting the golden light of the late afternoon sun. No one spoke for a moment, letting the silence hold a kind of comfort that words sometimes couldn't. Emily felt the subtle shift in the air, the sense of closeness she had been craving. Slowly returning, Mark took her hand in his, an ordinary gesture loaded with significance. He squeezed it gently, grounding them both. "I forgot how easy it used to feel, being with you," he said. "I want to remember that again." Emily smiled through her tears, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I want that too," she whispered. The tension of the past months began to dissolve, replaced by hope and quiet relief. Claire stood slightly apart, giving them space, her eyes soft. "I'll leave you two to talk," she said. "Sometimes the best help is just guiding people back to themselves." Emily watched her friend walk away, a feeling of gratitude welling in her chest. Claire hadn't intruded. She hadn't created distance. She had merely acted as a bridge, helping Mark find his way back to Emily. And in that moment, Emily realized something important. Sometimes love doesn't disappear. Sometimes it just gets lost beneath the weight of everyday life, needing a gentle hand to bring it back. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Emily and Mark talked for hours. They spoke about fears, frustrations, hopes, and dreams. They shared laughter, quiet sighs, and even a few tears. For the first time in months, the walls between them felt broken down, replaced by the warmth of honesty and vulnerability. Weeks passed, and Emily noticed subtle changes at home. Mark started making breakfast on weekends, small acts of care that spoke louder than words. Evenings were spent together again watching movies, walking around the neighborhood, sometimes sitting in silence but holding hands, feeling connected. The distance that had seemed insurmountable melted slowly but surely. Emily never forgot the night she had asked Claire for help. She understood now that the favor she requested wasn't about Claire taking her place. It was about reopening a channel of communication that had closed between her and Mark. She realized that love sometimes needs a little help from the outside. Someone who can see what's hidden, someone who can gently guide without judgment. One evening, as Emily and Mark sat on their porch watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Emily turned to him. "Thank you," she said softly, "for opening up, for letting me back in." Mark smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Thank you for trusting me, and for trusting Claire to help us when we needed it." They sat together in silence, holding hands, knowing that the bridge had been rebuilt. Not perfectly, not instantly, but steadily, with care, patience, and love. Emily realized that some lessons come through moments of discomfort. Watching Claire and Mark had been hard, yes, but it had been necessary. It reminded her that vulnerability could be beautiful, and that love, when nurtured, could recover even from months of quiet distance. In the end, Emily understood that the favor she asked for had not only helped Marquettes, had healed them both. It reminded them that honesty, patience, and gentle guidance could restore even the most strained connections. And in that restoration, Emily discovered something new, a renewed depth to her love, a stronger bond that had been waiting quietly beneath the surface, ready to be embraced once again. As night fell over Seattle, Emily and Mark stayed on the porch, wrapped in a comfortable closeness, knowing they had weathered a quiet storm and emerged stronger. They had learned that asking for help wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a step toward healing, toward understanding, and ultimately toward each other. And with that realization, Emily felt a calm she hadn't known in months. She looked at Mark, truly looked at him, and felt the quiet certainty that their love was alive, enduring, and worth every moment of struggle, patience, and care.